Hi my friends, it's Oz here at kctvmedia.com, and of course we're based in Britain, which I don't know if you know this, but in the Hebrew language Britain means a covenant people, a covenant land. So we have at least 3,000 years of history, of Hebrewic history, caught up in this particular country. And of course that is a story in itself, and we do our utmost to share a little bit about that on our website at KCTV Media. Now I want to tell you that we had a lovely break out in Chamonix, thanks to friends and family, just for about 4 or 5 days, but the weather was definitely on the mild side, and of course on the lower slopes most of the snow had melted away, and we started talking to a few local folk, and they were quite concerned because they can see that if the weather doesn't get colder, if they have a poor season, that's obviously going to affect the whole industry in that valley. But you see, we are very privy to information that will give you some idea that our weather today is being changed. It's being, well, people in government around the world have been using a system called HAARP, H-A-A-R-P, for the last 30 odd years. And we've stumbled on a particular HAARP centre just the other side of Wales, on the west side of Wales, and you'll see that in our YouTube clip zone at KCTV Media. I'm just sharing that because I had to, share what we know. If we don't share stuff that we're solid about, then it's an opportunity lost, and people are scratching their heads wondering what's happening with the weather. We've had so much rain in this country over the last 8 weeks. I mean, December was just every day it rained. So coming back to the focus, really, there are changes. We're seeing changes around the world, and things are not like what they used to be. And of course you could say, change does happen. So I'd like you to jot down a few of these very important story headlines. First of all, CERN, C-E-R-N. There is something about that setup that doesn't smell right, and if you go into Google and certainly come back into our site or Rick Wiles' site, we are going to be putting up information stories about that. Agenda 21 you can check out straight away by going into Google and put Agenda 21. What's that all about? I'll tell you. And likewise the RAND Corporation, and then put UFO at the end of it. Okay. Certainly there's a very good story that Rick is covering, Decay of America, some very good speakers on that, and of course Obama, connection to terror, and his family connections, very interesting link there. All these little stories you will find in Rick Wiles' site over the last 4 to 5 days. So if you go back from the 5th of January to the end of December, just check those recordings out because they are amazing. In fact, to be honest with you, I was using my phone connected to the net to listen to some of this stuff because I was just blown away by what's going on. Now we're going to come shortly to hear a guy called Jim Willie, who is putting forward that the global financial reset has actually started. Now what's that all about? Well, it's going to affect you. It's going to affect your pocket and what is in your bank account, because there are things happening today that will affect us all really in 2016 and beyond. Anyway, come back to our site when you can. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you guys who've sent in discs and testimonials. Fantastic. We're going to be changing the site a little bit, and obviously just having a bit of a broom through the whole thing, and we look forward to hearing from you. Okay, God bless for now.
And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. One man, one microphone, one mission, one message. True News, the only newscast reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And now for the most powerful hour on radio, here is End Time Newsman, Rick Wiles.
This is True News, 1 hour of uncensored news, views, and commentary. Welcome to the program. I'm Rick Wiles. It's good to be back in the office. Susan and I went away after Christmas for some private family time. We rented a log cabin in the Ozark Mountains and spent a lot of time by the fireplace trying to stay warm. Our son Jeremy and his wife and their little daughter, Avalon, went along too. You know, it was only the second vacation Susan and I had in 17 years, and we really needed to get away. In previous years, we simply didn't have a staff large enough here at True News to permit me to go away. And we're very grateful for the awesome team the Lord assembled at True News in 2015. It feels great to be surrounded by a loyal team dedicated to enlarging and improving True News in 2016. Hat Trick Letter publisher Jim Willie will be here in a few minutes with his insight into the breakup of the existing global financial system and the emergence of a new world order. If you didn't receive my e-newsletter last week, I'll give you a quick summary. The True News survey results were overwhelmingly lopsided in favor of online digital access of the program. We surveyed our financial contributors, the folks who underwrite True News. Among our donors, only 0.02% listen to True News on Sirius XM satellite radio. 2.5% listen on an AM or FM broadcast station. 12% listen on a shortwave radio station. And over 85% listen online, mainly at the True News website or on the True News app. Now, we invested approximately $1 million in 2015 purchasing airtime on AM, FM stations, shortwave radio stations, and Sirius XM satellite radio. The survey revealed, however, that nearly 9 out of 10 people who financially support True News listen to the program on their computer, tablet, or smartphone. 5 years ago, 50% of our donations came from folks listening on shortwave radio. In 2015, less than 1% of our annual donations came from the shortwave radio audience. Yet 10% of our budget was devoted to buying airtime on shortwave radio stations. As you can see, there is a dramatic shift underway in the manner in which people access and use media content. I had to make a decision with the data given to us through this survey. Accordingly, I canceled all 160 AM/FM radio affiliate contracts effective January 8. Likewise, SiriusXM is canceled on the same date, and we canceled all of our shortwave radio coverage on December 31st, 2015, with the exception of one frequency, 93.95. If you are presently listening to True News on an AM/FM station or SiriusXM, you will have to use our website, truenews.com, or download the True News app starting January 9. Now, we have a new website and a new app under development. Both will be unveiled this spring. True News will also be available on various digital affiliates such as blogtalkradio.com, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Now, the funds that we devoted to purchasing airtime in 2015 will be redirected in 2016 to developing and producing new and better content that will be available on our website and app. Also, we have a new global digital media platform that is under development, and the first phase will be unveiled in late February at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, here is an important thought to consider. The online audience subsidized the AM, FM, Sirius XM shortwave broadcasting so that millions of people could hear True News. The overwhelming majority of the people listening on those stations or platforms did not respond with support. Now, we never struggled to pay the bills. The Lord provided, even though the people tuning into those stations were not willing to support us. I believe God wanted to make sure they heard the warnings. And they did hear it. And apparently, it wasn't something they wanted to hear. And that's because the True News program is sandwiched in between a lot of religious programs such as Focus on the Family. The audience traditionally tuning into religious radio is not prepared to come out of their religious bubble. They want to stay inside their delusion of safety. Life for them, however, will change abruptly and sharply, and they won't be ready for it. There's another group of Christians, however, who are wide awake and preparing spiritually and physically. And I can't think of a more vivid personification of the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 slept too late and were not ready when the cry was shouted that the bridegroom was on his way. They stumbled in the darkness of the night, seeking oil for their lamps. But it was their fault. They chose to sleep too late and not prepare. You've got to be totally clueless not to notice that darkness, indeed gross darkness, is covering the world. You can feel it, see it, sense it. Much of the Western world is openly embracing spiritual darkness, and it will only get worse in the years to come. For this ministry, we will be 99.9% digital in 2016. As I said, we are keeping one small shortwave radio transmitter going in respect to the folks who have listened to us for years via shortwave. We simply aren't going to pump hundreds of thousands of dollars into it this year. Now, we do have a plan underway to continue to reach them. Our plan is to build and operate our own shortwave radio stations located outside of the United States of America. We hope to soon acquire a small tract of land on a Caribbean island where we can build shortwave radio transmitters that can send a signal into the United States of America when the grid goes down or the regime shuts down the internet to the American public during a national crisis. Such a crisis is coming. I don't know when or how it will start, but there are many possibilities available today. One possibility is a showdown in Oregon between the federal government and ranchers and patriots who are protesting the unjust imprisonment of 2 ranchers who were convicted of starting fires on their private property. If Mr. Obama sends his goon squad there to shoot it out with the ranchers, it may be all that's needed to spark an uprising against Washington's abuse of power. And let's not forget that Mr. Obama plans to sign illegal and unconstitutional presidential executive orders this week to impose more federal controls on the purchase and ownership of firearms. Meanwhile, stock markets around the world plunged today after China halted trading in Shanghai. Iran and Saudi Arabia are threatening each other after the Saudis executed a respected Shia Muslim cleric. Turkey's President Erdogan praised Adolf Hitler as his role model. What does this say about this NATO member? It's no wonder Vlad Putin is talking about Russia's determination to defeat Nazism with a modern-day anti-Hitler military coalition. By the way, the 58-year-old Russian General Igor Sergun, director of the main intelligence directorate of Russia's general staff, known as GRU, died suddenly days ago. And there's increasing speculation that Chinese troops will be sent to Syria. And the armies of Israel, Russia, Syria, and Iran all went on high alert December 31st because intelligence reports indicate that Hezbollah will soon attack Israel. If you ask me, I'd say World War III has already started. Are you ready? If you died tonight, are your sins forgiven? Is your name written in God's book of life? If it isn't, get it done now. Let's take a break. Jim Willie will be here when I return. This is True News.
New scientific research has revealed the damaging effects that pornography has on the brain. The shocking brain scans of a heroin addict and a guy hooked on porn show they're nearly identical. A new 6-disc film series teaches men biblical strategies to find freedom through the renewal of the mind. Order it online at conquerseries.com. Hundreds of thousands of men are finding freedom from porn through the powerful strategies taught in the Conquer series. Get the 6-disc DVD set for you and your church men's group at conquerseries.com.
Well, welcome back to our first True News program of 2016. There are a number of big news stories that we are following today. Two Islamic nations, Iran and Saudi Arabia, are on the verge of war. Ranchers and patriots in Oregon seized a federal building to protest the imprisonment of two ranchers accused and convicted of arson for starting fires on their own property. Barry Obama is expected to sign executive orders expanding federal gun controls despite a lack of constitutional authority to do such a thing. And stock markets around the world plunged today after China halted trading following a 7% drop in the Shanghai stock market. Jim Willie is here to talk about the state of the global financial system. Jim is a statistical analyst and the author and publisher of the Hat Trick newsletter. The website is goldenjackass.com. Jim, as you and I are recording today's program early in the morning, the Dow is down 350 points. Is this the beginning of the Obama recovery?
I don't know. I think it's the beginning of maybe a return to reality in the new year. We've got some suspended animation for quite some time, many, many months. I always take a little snicker and giggle when I read U.S. financial press and it mentions the sluggish recovery or the stubborn recovery or the long enduring battle for the recovery. There's no recovery at all. We're in our 7th year of a very stiff recession. And what's funny is that it's not legal or permitted to call it a recession. They must call it a qualified, like a sluggish recovery. And if they don't, they'll be fired. It's that simple. So, you know, I really don't follow the stock market, but it certainly is an important market. A little known to many people is that the QE, the quantitative easing policy, monetary policy, has extended beyond its mandate and is controlling the financial markets in a way to include the stock market. And that's never been done before, except for maybe this cycle or very recent cycles. So, you know, to control the bond market is normal, but Wall Street and the Fed, or maybe Wall Street from the Fed, is propping the stock market. And I like to tell people, they ask, well, what should I do? What should I do? How about you sell your mutual funds and stock accounts that are propped up artificially and buy gold and silver that are suppressed down artificially. Isn't the whole object to sell high and buy low? I mean, we're in a backwards, upside down situation with the American public. They want to feel comfy, cozy, warm, and fuzzy. And as a result, they're buying more and more into the stock market. Oh no, the stock market's doing well, I'm going to buy. No, stock market is propped. Sell. Get out. So the world is turning upside down. We got so many different elements. One of the themes I'd like to touch today, probably not as an introductory topic, is that the reset has begun. The long-awaited 2-year wait for the reset, it is now here. And it is evident in numerous different ways. But let's just save that for our final topic as a climax. Not so much as a tease to keep people's interest, but this is the most important thing today. If you were to ask me starting right out, Jim, what's the most important thing going on right now? I'd say, well, it's clearly the death of the dollar, evident by the very steep decline in the oil price. But the reset has begun. In some respects, the plug has been pulled.
Jim, the Shanghai market dropped 7% today. They halted trading. How significant is a 7% drop?
Well, 7% for the United States, what would that be? If I don't even know where the S&P is, but the Dow, isn't that somewhere around 17,000?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, what's 7% of that? 1,000-point drop. You think 1,000-point drop would attract attention in the United States? We're opening up minus 350, but we get better control mechanisms. By that I mean market rigging, I don't want to say illegal, but illicit gimmicks to control things. The exchange stabilization fund steps to the fore and takes over. 7% is very big. A lot of, I think, misguided watchers, and I'm referring mainly to Americans and some Canadians, they actually believe that China is going to enter some kind of a failure. They don't have any external debt. They don't have any external foreign-held Chinese debt. How are they going to enter a failure? I mean, the foreigners can't pull their hot money out because they don't have any external debt. They've also got about 30,000 tons of gold with which to back their currency and quickly lift their entire banking system if they choose to do so. But they don't choose to do so because we're selling them heavily discounted gold. Oh my gosh. Now, the 7% decline it's a big item on the mark on the wall for China, but for me it's a small yawn. I don't really think it's important. Yeah, it's important, but in the big scheme of things, Rick, it's not important. Much more important is what's going on in the House of Saud, and what's going on with Russia taking control of the oil price setting mechanisms. What's going on with various European countries saying we're not going to follow the U.S. lead to destruction and destroyed economies and banking systems. I mean, those are the much bigger pressure points than the Chinese stock market. If you're going to ask me what's the most important thing going on in China right now, I'd say, well, the gradual move toward the Shanghai gold fix, how they take control of the gold price, not their stock market.
Jim, the New York Stock Exchange several months ago announced that they were going to eliminate stop orders, I think February 18. What are they getting ready for? Bigger
lies. They're not stopping stop orders. You think the Wall Street banks will have that applied to them?
No, but what about for the average investor?
It's a press announcement. It's kind of like the Fed rate hike. They said 25 basis points. Well, we haven't gotten 25 basis points on the effective Fed funds rate. So I don't care what their announcements are. I care what the reality is. No stop orders? That's a bunch of BS. Let me know if it applies to JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citi, and Bank of America. I think the answer is a resounding no.
But it will apply to the average investor.
Well, that means that the average investor can have bigger losses.
You want to comment about the flare-up between Saudi Arabia and Iran?
Well, yeah, but it extends to beyond the borders into Yemen. We got a proxy war in Yemen. I mean, yeah, you can focus on the executions in Riyadh. You can focus on the demonstration in Tehran in front of the Saudi embassy. You can focus on a lot of those things, but I like to look at the undercurrent, why those boils popped in Riyadh and Tehran. And the answer is the proxy war in Syria, where Saudi is, with tremendous U.S., British, and Israeli cooperation, funding, arming, and directing the ISIS elements in Syria. By the way, the ISIS headquarters for field operations is the U.S. Embassy in Ankara, Turkey. Okay? People really need to wake up. Okay, so you've got the Saudis working against Iran in Syria. Iran has 30 years of backing of Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria in that region. So that's one point of conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia. The other one is more recent in Yemen. And to understand Yemen, you really need to begin with the whole concept that the Saudi excess capacity, extra reserves, their oil reserves, they're much, much lower than what they admit. And evidence of that is that the Ghawar oil field, which is over 40 years old, I think it was discovered in the 50s, so it's like 60 years old almost. The Ghawar oil field is producing 98% water. Okay, well, they don't like to talk about that, but if you go to the Oil Drum, a website, you'll get a lot of technical information and drilling information and technology about non-vertical drilling and lots and lots of different methods that they use. It's kind of like an Aramco research site. You'll see that back in 2007, when I was first exposed to it, they were having a 93 or 94% water cut, which means percentage of output being water. And now it's over 98. It's probably close to 99. They don't like to talk about it. They like to say, well, we have a lot of other fields. Well, they do, but some of them are big and some of them are not, but their major field is almost dead. Very few people are aware Yemen is their southern neighbor on the same Arabian Peninsula. Do you think maybe Yemen shares the same geological traits as Saudi Arabia? Yeah. They've got some recent very large gas discoveries. They've got some recent significant oil discoveries in Yemen. And like Somalia, they're struggling to put together a government. Okay, so you have a lot of tribal elements there. The Iranians have been all over Yemen. They're backing the Shiite element of the tribal entities in Yemen. And the Saudis are committing war crimes, just like the United States does in Syria. They're bombing hospitals, they're bombing schools, they're bombing community centers, they're calling them, terrorist outposts. Well, I don't think a hospital and a school is a terrorist outpost. The United Nations is taking a closer look at the Saudi actions in Yemen. The only problem is that the head of the war crimes, I'm not sure what they call it, a tribunal in the United Nations is Saudi. So the Saudis are presiding over the war crimes, and they will decide on Saudi war crimes. Yeah, that's not going to likely go very far. All right, so Yemen has turned out to be a proxy war between the Saudis and the Iranians, and it's not going well for the Saudis. In fact, it's so bad that the western region of Saudi Arabia, where there are some oil fields, and they are ample oil fields and not so old, they're not the 60-year-old oil fields, they're in Shiite hands. And, again, Americans just don't follow this because it's not part of our mainstream. The western area of Saudi Arabia has been suppressed for a long, long time. They're not Sunni. They're not the moderate Muslims. They're the more, I don't like to try to describe them. I'll just say that they're the Shiite variety of Muslims. And Riyadh, the central government of Saudi Arabia, has done their level best to make sure that funding and support and business funding and various different things have not reached the Shiite areas. So they've been kept down for 20 years. Now it's payback time. The Houthi rebels of Yemen are moving across the border, and they're knocking at the door at the Saudi western oil fields. So it's about oil and energy. It's about expanding the Saudi kingdom. And instead of expanding, it's going to implode. That is my call. I call it the fall of the House of Saud. I started talking about this early 2014, and I got a dozen reasons why I believe the House of Saud will fall.
All right, let's hold it right there. I'm going to take a real short break. I'm talking to Jim Willie. He is the author and publisher of The Hat Trick Letter. His website is goldenjackass.com. We're going to take a short break. I'll be back in a minute. This is True News.
The believer who grasps the truth about Jesus' death and resurrection gains God's perspective on life's big questions. Here's A Moment with Charles Stanley.
If you had a friend who was facing death, what would be the two things that you would be most concerned about? Would it not be their relationship to Jesus Christ? And secondly, would you ever see them again? That is, the cross and the resurrection. Upon those two basic truths, the truth of the cross and the resurrection, all of Christianity stands upon those two. And no matter what people may say or what they may believe, those two are the foundational truths. The fact that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came into this world for the primary purpose of dying for the sin of mankind. And that would not be sufficient. For unless there was proof, living proof, eternal proof, why not place him in the same category with all other prophets? But the Bible says that on the third day he rose from the grave, that he was seen by 500 at one time, and then finally, that as he ascended to the heavens to sit at the Father's right hand, he was seen by multitudes, and that the angels said, "Why do you stand here gazing, looking at this? This same Jesus whom you see here now rising will one day come again." Do you believe that? The truth is, the crucifixion and the resurrection are the foundational truths without which, if you'll think about it, we're just passing through life. When you remove the cross and the resurrection, answer the question, what is the purpose of life? Answer the question, how am I to spend my life? Answer the question, what am I to do with those resources that God has placed at my disposal? What is it all about? The cross and the resurrection of Jesus Christ are not just important, not just paramount, they are the two foundational truths.
Jesus Christ died as the perfect sacrifice for sin, and he rose from the grave to validate his victory over sin and death. Trust him to forgive you today, and visit us at intouch.org to learn more about becoming a Christian.
Reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ, you're listening to True News, the End Time Newscast.
Welcome back to True News. I'm Rick Wiles. I'm talking with Jim Willie, publisher of The Hat Trick Letter. The website is goldenjackass.com. We were talking in the first segment about the proxy war in Yemen between Saudi Arabia and Iran. There's another proxy war also taking place. That's in Syria. Just about the entire world is gathering in Syria. Last week, while I was away, I read an article out of Russia that said, will Chinese troops enter Syria in 2016? Why not? It's a world war, so the Chinese might as well bring the troops there too. Jim, just before we took a break, you said you had a list of reasons why the House of Saud would collapse.
Yes, it's not a short list. To begin with, their oil reserves are down. They always boast that they have spare capacity. They don't. They lie. So they want to replace their oil reserves. What better place to do so would be the backwaters of their neighbor, Yemen. Okay, the other big thing is that the decline in the oil price has slammed not just the shale sector in North America, I mean, like the Dakotas and parts of Canada, it slammed Saudi Arabia. They've got a major component of their federal revenue from oil. Well, they're having severe budget deficits. They just announced a $135 billion annual deficit. That's gigantic for them. That's gigantic. I don't have a ratio, but I'm guessing it would be trillions in the United States. Okay, do you think maybe they're going to cut their oil production in order to lift the oil price? No! They've got budget deficits. So they're going to pump even more to get even more revenue, so their neighbors, their competitors in OPEC, don't raise their output to take market share away from the Saudis. So we've got a price war. We've got a volume amplification going on. And the Saudis are going to make sure that we get a lower oil price. I mean, add in the extra Iranian volume that's going to hit the market, add in how the U.S. dropped their export ban. New oil will hit the international market from the U.S. sources. So we're going to see lower oil price. All right. There's a growing, I don't know what you call it, turbulence inside Saudi Arabia toward Islamic reform. They just do a lot of nutty things there, and I don't want to get into a whole lot of details, but you know, cutting off a 20-year-old kid's hand because he stole something, that's just not right, and it's not going to continue. But if a Saudi prince is caught in Beirut with 32 boxes of heroin, I mean, they don't cut his heart out. No, they just put him back on the job. So there's a lot of hypocrisy there. There's something that's been going on, and this was brought up by the hitman. Oh gosh, what was his name? The hitman from the CIA. Confessions of a Hitman.
Yeah, John Perkins.
John Perkins, excellent, thank you. He publicized this in the late 90s. It was called the Royal Appropriations. And a quick example is some prince shows up to a guy's business office and says, "We really like your business. We see that you have a chain across 6 cities in Saudi Arabia. We want to buy your business for $80 million. And the guy says, "It's worth 10 times that." And they said, and then the prince says, "We want to buy it for 80 million, or we're going to put you in jail for tax violations, underage sex, you name it." So the guy sells, and they bargain at a price. The princes are buying up private property on threats of action, like tax courts and prosecutions and all kinds of different things. All right, that's called appropriations abuse. The women want more rights. They're tired of being slaves within their own countries. There's a lot of hubbub going on right now that finally the Saudis are being revealed as part of the Bush family narcotics ring. And for a while it was just private profit for the Saudi princes, and now it's formal funding for ISIS. Okay, all these things are coming together. The war is not going well with Yemen, and I think the fall of the House of Saud could actually happen this calendar year.
And if that happens in 2016, what do you expect the aftermath to look like in Riyadh? Are we looking at an ISIS-led government in Riyadh?
I don't think so. I think ISIS is going to crumble. Don't you think the Russian military has pretty well destroyed the northern front of ISIS? Why would you think that ISIS is strong enough to take over a government? They're having a hard time just maintaining their convoys of trucks. They're having a hard time maintaining their payroll because the narcotics is being interrupted from Saudi, and the Russians are interrupting other narcotics.
And the oil convoy is going to Turkey.
Yeah. Here's what I think is likely to happen if Saudi Arabia falls. 5 other oil-based Arab monarchies fall also. They're not going to become Somaliland with no governments and a bunch of warlords. they're going to become more like a popular tribunal, stepping forward and saying we're going to take control here, and we've got a large segment of the military on our side.
Perhaps a Muslim Brotherhood?
No, the Muslim Brotherhood and all that, those are religious fanatic groups that are pretty much tied with ISIS. That's, again, an ISIS argument. ISIS is going to be disbanded. A little known fact is that Obama's half-brother is the main agent for managing ISIS funds. And they're doing so in a Singapore bank account with lots of connections to the Swiss banks. These things are going to be revealed. It's going to be the year of revelations. And I don't mean revelations in a biblical sense. I mean revelations of major crime scenes, like Obama's half-brother being in charge of Muslim Brotherhood and managing the funds for ISIS. And if you think ISIS is, really not too closely involved with the U.S. government, you need to take a closer look at John McCain's emails, because it was recently revealed a few months ago that he had direct communications with some studios to falsify some beheading videos. But that's okay. He's a connected guy. He won't be charged with treason any more than Hillary will.
That story didn't get any traction in the U.S. news media.
Of course not.
Are you talking about Obama's half-brother in Sudan?
I'm not sure which one it is.
Yeah, there's one brother or half-brother working with the dictator in Sudan.
Well, that's not too surprising, Rick, because Sudan is providing a lot of mercenaries to the Yemen war, and they're being killed in great numbers.
Here's a question I want to hear your explanation on regarding Saudi Arabia flooding the world market with oil. The various stories, the Saudis are trying to bankrupt Russia. The Saudis are trying to bankrupt the U.S. Oil industry. But at the same time, they're bankrupting themselves. They're floating bonds for hundreds of billions of dollars. Why are the Saudis flooding the market with oil?
Because they're in danger of bigger budget deficits. They're managing today, Rick. They're not managing tomorrow. Are you assuming they're smart? I don't.
No, I don't assume anybody in government is smart.
No, they're managing today. A few months ago, they made a decision to increase their output in order to reduce their budget deficit. It's still big. They're not smart. They're corrupt.
But if oil was back up over the $100 mark, they wouldn't have these deficits.
That's true. How do you bring that about? Don't you think you need maybe a global economic recovery for that? What's the biggest obstacle for the global economic recovery? I say, plain and simple, the Fed's monetary policy of QE and hyper-monetary inflation, bond purchase, unsterilized bond purchase, which destroys capital like acid does a metal table. So the Saudis are watching the Americans and British destroy the global economy through their capital base, hurting the global economy, forcing the recession to be worse, reducing the energy demand, and that's out of their control, Rick. So they raise their output and try to reduce their budget deficit, which lowers the oil price. This whole story about Saudis doing damage to Russia, it's propaganda. That story came out as soon as the Secretary of State, John Kerry, made a trip to Saudi, and the press story immediately afterwards was Saudi Arabia has agreed to do harm to Russian economy. Oh, what a bunch of nonsense. Russia just hit an all-time record, by the way, post-Soviet era record of oil output. So are they trying to lift the oil price, or are they trying to manage their own deficits? Same story. They're managing today and not worrying about tomorrow, because I think they realize, and this is a very profound point I'm going to make, Rick. The Russians realize what I realize. The low oil price is the signal of the dying dollar. Americans and U.S. and Western press and financial analysts, they watch the dollar and say it's strong. I watch the oil price and say the dollar's dead. After 71, when the gold standard was broken, it's called the Bretton Woods Accord, what replaced the gold standard but the de facto petrodollar standard? Okay, if your standard for backing, even on a de facto basis for the dollar, was oil, and oil is going down in value, does that not mean that the entity backed by oil is dying? Yes. And this is where the paradox comes. When the oil price goes down, the dollar gets flipped up. When the dollar gets flipped up, gold gets flipped down because they're negatively correlated. So the death of the dollar is seen in the low oil price, which kills the economy, kills the oil sector. We're not having a recovery. We're having a death event, multi-sequence death event.
Jim, will the declining oil prices compel Saudi Arabia to depeg from the U.S. petrodollar?
I think so. We're seeing a lot of pressure now. The Saudi Riyal, I think it's R-I-Y-A-L. I'm not certain about that. But I think the Saudis are going to depeg, and here's why. Their budget deficit is huge. It's just staggering huge. So they're going to want to finance it. They're floating bonds, but would you want to buy a Saudi bond when you think they might have a regime collapse? No. No one in his right mind is going to buy. They're going to buy out of being compelled. They're going to have to support and finance their own deficits. And to do that, one key mechanism, and this is not new, this is several hundred years old, is to devalue your currency and make it cheaper for foreigners to do so. In other words, discount the purchase of your debt. And the impact of that will be price inflation, which is one more log on the domestic fire in Saudi Arabia. They're already a poor country. They got 25% of their population that's dirt poor.
Jim, if the Saudis depeg from the U.S. dollar, where do they go? They're not friends with Moscow. Do they go to China? Who do they team up with?
Unfortunately for the Saudis, they don't have any friends at all. They're going to team up with China more, but all that means is that China is going to expand their realm. They're going to expand their sphere of influence. They're going to expand their, not military control, their commercial shadow. The Chinese are already in tight with Iran. I thought several months ago that China is going to just slam the table and say to Iran and Saudi, play nice. But the United States always makes it difficult for nations to play nice because the United States is right in there with the Saudis in Yemen. And the trademark is war crimes. Bombing hospitals, bombing schools, calling them terrorist outposts. I mean, one of my favorite examples of U.S. Terrorism like this, war crime, is Aleppo, Syria, where 3 or 4 months ago the United States announced that they were bombing strongholds in Aleppo. No, they bombed the electricity generating center for the whole stinking town, the whole city. It's one of the largest cities in Syria. So what, were terrorists hiding behind the generators? No, they wanted to destroy the infrastructure. That's what the U.S. and Saudis are doing. The Saudis have been an exporter of terrorism for 20 years under the guise of Islam. And a lot of true Muslims don't like it. So they're not going to really lift a hand to help the Saudis. The Saudis don't have very many friends, even in the Arab world. And they certainly don't have any friends in the United States, except for the military and the defense contractors who have a very big client in Saudi for selling weaponry. The U.S. messed up their relationship with the Saudis, Rick, by stealing Saudi gold in the Swiss banks. And the whole story of UBS violating Iran sanctions and setting up U.S. citizen tax dodging accounts, and the whole story of Credit Suisse, pretty much the same reasons for slamming them legally. It was to take control of the 2 biggest Swiss banks. They just needed a reason. Coming up with a reason is easy. The U.S. will make an edict that such and such is not legal, declare a country in violation, then take over their bank. The Iran sanctions were made unilaterally. The British went along. The Europeans followed, and they don't like it. Okay, so we took over UBS and Credit Suisse in Switzerland. We took over their banks. We took over their policy. We stole the Arab gold. And the Saudis announced way back in, I think it was early 2014, we're going to, go it alone and make some new friends and try to establish better relations with the Eastern powers. And what we saw in 2014 was a monthly conference that I called a love fest between the Saudis and the Chinese for capital layouts, big capital layouts like with projects, cultural exchange, business to business relations, banks to business relations, lots of different things were set up and established. And also came in RMB swap facilities. So the Saudis pretty much announced, we're done with this dollar business. And the American press doesn't report that properly. They report on the Yemen war and they report on, various incidents in Saudi Arabia. The Western press never reports properly what's going on in the financial world for little breakdowns and big collapses in the dollar structure.
Jim, will there be a single event, or what moment in time does the Saudi royal family decide to pull the plug on the petrodollar?
I think that's done long ago, Rick. It's not a future event. I just laid out a scenario for 2014 where they did just that. They recognized their gold was stolen in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
They decided they were going to set up tighter relations and various what I call commercial cable lines with China and expanded their RMB swap facility. That's to do trade outside the dollar.
But at what point does it become known to the whole world?
Well, I'm not sure the whole world has the intelligence level to be aware. I'm not sure what value the question has. We're likely to move toward the global police state while the public is in a mantra of economic recovery, support the dollar, economic recovery, like, an incantation with black robes and candles. So I don't really care.
So it's a transition that's already underway, and the American public will never fully comprehend what transpired.
No, I don't think they have the capacity, and I don't think they're going to get the information, and I don't think they can make the leap to conclude that most big corporations and big banks are satanic in the United States. I don't think they have the capacity to accept that. It's not in their DNA. But there are going to be some trigger events. I thought you were going to ask what single event will not increase awareness, but will topple the system. And that's sub $30 oil.
All right. Let's pretend I asked that question.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't care so much about awareness. I gave up on that back in 2010 and 11 with the conversation with my sister and my father. I had a very sharp break in the summer of 2010. I just decided I don't think they're ever going to get it. And if smart people like my sister and my father don't get it, how's the American public going to get it? I didn't come from a dumb family.
So there's not going to be a moment where the news headlines say Saudis depeg from petrodollar.
Well, they might, but I don't give the American public credit to understand what it even means.
Even if it was there.
Rick, do they know what a depeg means? Did they know what a depeg of the Swiss euro was all about? I don't think so. I mean, yeah, fine, it'll be a big moment. It'll be in the press perhaps, but I don't think 5% of the American population will comprehend it.
What happens when oil drops below the $30 mark?
Big banks explode with covenant violations and decide they're not going to put more loans on patches for the energy companies to service their debt. Two things: covenant violations and no more patches. Let it go. Let it go. It's now a point of good money after bad. Let it go.
We'll see a lot of mid-level and small-level energy companies go belly up and consumed by the big oil companies?
I don't know. We might see big oil companies go belly up. Why would you think a big company would take over a little company or a mid company? I think they're all going to be in deep trouble. They're all going to be in the same stinky pond. Exxon, we all know, is the Rockefeller Energy Company, right?
Mm-hmm.
In 2015, they divested 80% of their energy assets.
You're talking about the Rockefeller family.
Yes.
Right.
And the Rockefeller Foundation, they divested 80% of their energy assets. So who owns Exxon?
It's not the Rockefellers anymore.
Apparently not. So I'm not sure that they're going to be saved. I think they might be carved up, Rick.
Right. So, I talked about this in 2015 when this happened because, it's a giant red flag. The Rockefeller family sold off their shares in Exxon. So what does the Rockefeller family know is coming?
I think two things. Cold fusion and the fuel cell, which is water-based energy production. Heavy water used. I don't know if these are not common concepts, but the fuel cell, it requires heavy water, tritium, and we got isotopes of water, and this is just, it's all very complicated. People can't swallow this stuff.
Jim, hold that thought. We're out of time for our broadcast radio affiliates. I want you to stay on the telephone, and you and I will continue this conversation. Part 2 will be available on TrueNews.com and the True News app. The newsletter is the Hat Trick Letter. There's nothing like it. I read it every month. It takes hours to read and digest it. It's not a quick and easy read. Jim's newsletter is loaded with inside information from multiple sources around the world. The Hat Trick Letter is actually 2 monthly reports, the Gold and Currency Report and the Global Money War Report. The website is goldenjackass.com. Only Jim would have a website with that name. If you've not heard the news, I'll let you in on something big. The old world order is coming apart at the seams. A new world order is emerging. It will transform the world for the next 100 years if the Lord Jesus Christ does not return in the 21st century. Power, influence, and wealth is fleeing the West and moving to the East. The lives of our children and grandchildren will be greatly impacted by this transfer of wealth and power. You and I are living in historic times. Multiple cycles are rolling over, some overlapping each other. The civil unrest cycle, the war cycle, the business cycle, a solar Maunder minimum cycle, a mini ice age cycle, and many more cycles are colliding in this present age. The collision will disrupt and reorder the world. Seek the wisdom of God to make major decisions for your life and for your posterity. Where they live will determine the quality of life for future generations of your family. In the meantime, you and I have an assignment. Psalm 96 says, "Oh, sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, bless his name. Proclaim the good news of his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the nations." Let's get on with the job of the Great Commission to preach the gospel of the kingdom of God in all the nations. Jesus is coming. Hey, this is Rick with a 5-minute behind-the-scenes report. Doc Burkhart is here with me. Doc, I did it. We canceled all of our radio affiliates.
Yes.
I did it.
Yep, every single one of them. Well, almost every single one of them.
And you were our radio affiliate manager.
Yeah. So I guess I'm looking for work now.
No, you're not looking for work. You're now helping us develop our online presence. We simply had to make that decision.
Yes.
There is a dramatic shift away from AM, FM, shortwave radio.
Yes, it's a big change, Rick.
It is. And you just said to me something during the break. I want you to share this with our audience.
Right. This is from an industry website that we refer to a great deal here at the ministry. I'll just read it verbatim here. There will be a huge disruption with the connected car and radio, and that's first in line. General Motors announced that its entire 2016 car line will feature Apple's and Google's auto interface. Apple CarPlay will be introduced into millions of new vehicles this year, and while the operating system will have an embedded podcast button, it won't have AM/FM buttons. Those will be several screens away. That's a giant game changer. That's an industry expert saying those words.
Let me get this straight.
Mm-hmm.
Automobiles manufactured by General Motors in 2016
Yes.
will not have AM/FM radio station buttons.
That's correct. And so it's changing in a big way. We always used to say in radio that all a car is a radio with wheels. Well, now it's a podcast player with wheels. That's essentially what the game has changed to now. So
Amazing. Absolutely
so it changed
amazing.
A lot.
That's a dramatic announcement. And this was appropriate that Doc would show that to me right now, because this comes on the heels of us making this announcement that we are going totally digital. I guess 99.9% digital. Yes. Well, we are keeping one shortwave transmitter going. We met with the owner of a large complex of shortwave stations. We told him the situation. We renegotiated our agreement. We said we want to keep something there. We have a loyal audience, but they're not able to pay what we are spending.
Right.
They're not able to support us at that level.
But we still want to get a message out.
But we want to get a message to them. And I also, Doc, I announced at the beginning of the program that you and I and Bob were working on a plan to actually build and own our own shortwave radio stations that will run on solar and wind power.
Yes.
So the only expense we're going to have will be the construction of those stations. Once they are constructed, they'll be basically maintenance free, other than maintaining the equipment and towers and things like that.
But our energy costs should be minimal compared to what they are now.
That's right.
That's the biggest expense in shortwave is your energy cost.
And we have to get those shortwave stations out of the United States, because if the grid goes down in the USA, or if there is a national emergency in the USA, domestically operated shortwave stations inside the USA could be taken over by the federal government.
And for folks who deny that, remember, whatever the government licenses, it controls.
That's right.
And so they can pull that license and they can take it off the air just as quickly as they let them stay
That's
on
right.
there.
And listen, you got to understand, the grid could go down in the United States, and the internet could go down in the United States, and the rest of the world will continue functioning.
That's right.
The USA will be in the dark, and the rest of the world will continue operating and act like they don't even know what's happening in the USA. So we're aware of it. The Lord has been speaking to us about this for many years. We have an urgency in our heart to do some things this year to prepare for that event. But the major thing that we're doing is making the transition to a digital format. You know, Doc, we continued with this interview with Jim Willie. Mm-hmm. I went another hour or so.
Yeah, more than an hour.
More than an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And but we can't put that on the radio because we have to buy each hour.
That's right. But we can put it on the website, and we can put it on the app, and that's exactly what we're going to do tonight.
So the second part of the Jim Willie interview is on TrueNews.com and the True News app. This is an example of what we're going to be doing in the months to come. Listen, we got to go. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow right here on True News.
Yeah, that was good stuff. Thank you, Rick. And what we hope to be doing is record a lot more content from Rick's site and other speakers around the world. And just to let you know, because I think it's important that we share how KCTV actually started, really, goes right back to 9/11, because on the 6th of September, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I had a terrible dream whereby I saw the Twin Towers literally on fire, smoke, you name it, and it was just incredible. And in fact, I woke up, of course, in the end, because it was such a dramatic dream. But I do remember seeing all the smoke flatlining to my left as I looked down at the small dots on the ground, and you could hear sirens in the background. It was a traumatic moment for me. It changed my life, and I suppose a couple of days later I was at a BMF breakfast for Christian business people, and there was only about 15 people altogether, but the Lord prompted me to stand up after the meal, and I just had to share what I saw in that dream. Of course, literally on the day, I was travelling through Cheltenham in the car, and literally coming up to that moment when that first plane went through or into the tower, I literally, driving the car, I went through a red light, and how I didn't smack into the lorry that was coming to my right, I'll never know. But there again, miracles happen, don't they? But I just wanted to share that with you. Of course, if you want to know a little bit more, please come on the podcast, because we do have a recording that covers a few more insights to how KCTV Media started. I wouldn't miss that, because it does really cover a lot of supernatural stuff with people that I've worked with, and companies and organizations that well, it's quite interesting, the world we live in, I tell you. There's a lot of demonic stuff around, and we really do have to be careful to what we do, and how we go about things. You'll understand if you go into the podcast, because there's so much material there that you can listen to, either on your phone or on a PC or laptop or whatever. It's just incredible how we can get this information out. In fact, we had our first hit from somebody in Saudi Arabia that came up on our radar, because we can obviously pinpoint the people that are coming in, what countries. Argentina and Uruguay is quite interesting. I wonder if there's a connection with Hitler on that one. But of course, feel free to contact us, send us information. We have a PO box address, so go on the website, and you can obviously use the secure contact us link, which will provide your information for us, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Sometimes that's not always the case, but we do our utmost to do that. And we do thank you for sending in gifts, because without gifts from time to time, we wouldn't be able to continue doing what we're doing. It does cost money to do this, and I do this more or less full time now, so I appreciate anything that comes in the post. Bless you. Catch up with you soon.